Welcome to the Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs podcast, a place for podcasters to learn what's actually working in the world of podcasting and how to use their podcast to generate consistent leads in their business. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm so excited you're here.
Hey, Savvies, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. In today's episode, we're talking about the other side of things, which is podcast guesting. On this show, we talk a lot about how you can maximize your own podcast, but now I want to approach it from the guest side because it is such a great way to grow your own podcast. I think more people should be guesting on other podcasts. So let's get into the episode. Before we dive in, I did want to share my podcast guesting guide with you all. And this walks through a bit more in depth how you can be a better podcast guest and even use some of these tactics to improve your own guest experience for your show, because that's very crucial as well. If you're interested, you can sign up by going to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/guest and grab that guide today. All right, let's get into the 4 ways to be a killer podcast guest. So, number 1. Show up on time and be prepared. As you'd want guests to be prepared to come on your show, you definitely want to do the same when you're on the other side. Just because it's not your show doesn't mean you should treat it any differently. You should treat it just as well as you treat your own show, because that is how people refer you to be on other podcasts. They refer you clients. It just creates that really nice open door relationship where you are able to collaborate with that person, not just for the podcast, but years down the line as well. Number 2, submit your headshot, bio, and any other materials you need as soon as possible. So you want to make this process as easy as possible on the host. So as soon as you can provide them with these materials, so they don't have to chase you down for them. I know you probably hate chasing down guests for their materials if you don't have a really solid guest onboarding process. So make it easy for them as well. You don't want to be chasing down people, so don't make them chase you down. It's just a common courtesy thing. And let's be real, you probably have your headshot and bio handy somewhere, and it's pretty easy to find. It's not something you have to craft and revamp every single time. So it should be pretty easy to do. Number 3, don't be afraid to give away the farm. I know it can be scary to feel like you're giving away too much for free, but I encourage you to not hold back during the interview, as hard as that may be, because you'll leave people thinking, wow, if their free stuff is this jam-packed, I can't imagine what their paid products are like. So don't be afraid to give away too much for free, because people are just going to be floored by how helpful you are for your free stuff. And they're going to be so excited to hire you for paid things if that's something they're needing to outsource at this time, or a course that they're looking to take. So I don't think there's anything wrong with giving away a lot for free, because it really only brings people into your space. If you don't give away enough, then people just think you're gatekeeping that information. So it's okay to give a lot away. Promise, it won't hurt you. It'll hurt you to be closed off and not giving. And then lastly, my biggest recommendation is to not give too many calls to action during the interview. I know it can be easy to start spewing off a ton of URLs for your freebies or your social media in general, but I really truly encourage you to try and limit it to 1 URL for a freebie. That is, if the host allows. Sometimes they don't allow you to share a freebie, but a lot of time they do. But just one URL for a freebie, because you don't need a million. And then also just your website. So that's another. And then 1 social media channel. Don't try to list every single one you have. The one you hang out on the most will be the one you should recommend, because if you give them too many options, then they'll be a lot less likely to take action at all, because you overwhelm them with all these links and all these URLs and all this information. 1 URL, your website, if you have one, and 1 social media channel. Just to try and combat that overwhelm before it can even happen. Give them as little options as you can, with still having it be able to be something that is going to serve you, obviously. So yeah, those are the 4 things you should do to be a killer guest. Obviously, there's a little bit more in-depth stuff in our podcast guesting guide. So make sure to grab that if you haven't already by heading to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/guest. And if you want to check out the show notes for this episode, you can find them at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, and leave a review. You can find us at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com and on Facebook at Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs and Instagram at Savvy Podcasting. Make sure to join our free Facebook community for podcasters by going to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/community and join in on the exclusive community just for Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs listeners. I'll see you there.